that your ley line is going through the middle of the house, through the pool that you love to swim in, and of course the big tree down the front there. So, you know, that made it even more special to Michael to say, yeah, wow, I picked the right place energetically, and, you know, that's why he loves it here. So, or one of the reasons he loves it here. So what am I talking about? What are ley lines? What is underground water? What is all of that about? So to give you a bit of an idea, so when we're talking about ley lines, these exist all over the planet. And we know that the ancient people knew about these because a lot of the cathedrals, a lot of the old churches through Europe, the Giza pyramids, you know, all of the sacred places, Mount Shasta, all of these sorts of things, they're all sitting over crossing positive ley lines. So they knew what they were doing when they were building in certain spots. And then the information was lost or buried or what have you. It seemed to disappear for quite some time. Then in the 1920s, a man in England named Alfred Watkins decided that he was going to find ley lines. He was convinced that these things existed and he was going to find them. And he was actually looking for physical markers on the earth of where these ley lines ran. I don't do that so much today, and I'll explain why. But so he started to go around and map these and chart them and all sorts of things. And then eventually the dowsers came along and they started checking what he was saying and realizing, yeah, okay, he's got it right. And so that started to develop, and there are actually books you can buy today with the major ley lines throughout England especially, all mapped, and some people have mapped the whole planet, etc. They're not necessarily the ones that I'm looking for because they are just the huge major ones, and yes, of course they're important, but there's so much more to it than that. And these things can actually change as well. So as the earth goes through its evolution, the ley lines can actually shift and change. And at the moment there are more negative ley lines on the planet than there are positive. So, but they do help keep the planet in balance somewhat because, like I say, there's the negative and the positive. This is a dual planet, so there is some balance created from that. There are other grids across the planet as well, called Cooroy lines, Hartmann lines, etc. So, for example, the Cooroy lines run north, south, and east, west, and they're positive, negative, all the way through. But occasionally you can get a scenario where a positive and a negative Cooroy line actually cross, and I call it a glitch in the matrix, where it creates an energy spiral that's very low vibrational. And when I get people to stand on them, I think it's 100% strike rate of people just going, wow, I can feel that. And I don't tell them what they're going to feel. I just say, stand here and see what you think. And they all say, oh, it feels heavy. It feels like it's kind of spiraling down. It's like, yep, that's right. Because most people are a lot more intuitive than what they even realize. Most people, when they're walking with me, I mean, you felt the different lines and things like that, you know, most people can feel them. And I often say to them, now imagine if you put your bed over this spot. You know, we get into bed and we go, oh, I can't sleep, oh, my thoughts are racing, and I don't know, I don't feel well, etc. No one stops to think, what's underneath my bed? They think, oh, what did I just eat? Or what have I, you know, what's running through all of these sorts of things. But it's time we started to pay attention to what's underneath us as well. Because sleep over these things long term, you can imagine the energy impact that can have. So that's ley lines, Cooroy lines, Hartmann lines run diagonally all across the planet as well, around about every 4 meters. So there's a lot of them. So they're all over this property, but again, there's only occasionally you'll get the positive and negative crossing that can create an energy vortex that's quite negative. Also underground water. When I go onto properties and I say, okay, let's have a look for where the water is, and people often say, oh great, maybe you can find where I can sink a bore, but that's not the water that I'm looking for. And the dowsers, the old dowsers are fantastic for that sort of thing. What I'm looking for is what I call black water, or toxic water, negative. So this is the water that is not healthy to drink, and it is actually creating energetic problems on the property. It can run through underground, picking up noxious elements from the rocks, etc. It can pick up noxious gases. You've probably heard of radon. We don't talk about it a lot in Australia, but in America they're starting to test homes for radon gases that actually come from the water underground up through the concrete foundations of your home and get trapped inside. And they're starting to actually condemn houses to say these are not safe to live in because of the noxious gases that are coming up through the home. In England, I've just found out they're starting to make some changes, and what they're doing is they're putting down the concrete foundation, Then they're putting a layer of plastic before they put more concrete on top, because those gases don't come through plastic. So I was speaking to a builder from England just recently, and he said, yeah, we're starting to do that, and that's the reason why. So I thought, great, common sense starts to prevail after a while. In Australia, though, like I said, we pretty much just ignore it. You can go onto the government websites and they do talk about radon gases associated with, underground water, etc. But they just kind of say, oh, it's not enough to worry about, which we've heard before about a few things, haven't we? Yeah.
Is that a gas that's emitted from granite or marble?
I believe so.
Yeah.
It is something to do with the gases that come out of certain rocks and things below. I'm not an expert on exactly which ones. Yeah, I think it might be. Yes, yeah. So this is the sort of water that I'm looking for. So sometimes it's running underground, and you might look at a property like this and think, oh yes, well, water runs down this way, so it probably does underneath as well. But sometimes I'm saying no, it's actually going this way, because underneath it can be going in any direction, and often it can follow the old earthquake lines as well. Now, I know Australia, compared to a lot of countries, is quite stable, but we do have 40 to 50 earthquakes every day in Australia, most of them under 2 on the Richter scale, and mostly in Victoria and South Australia. But the place still does rumble and move, and apparently the Earth's expanding and all of that sort of thing. So when I look at a property, I can just sort of see these lines running through, and often the water does follow those lines. So hence the fracturing of the rocks and, those sorts of things as well, where these gases are released. So living over underground water can feel, if it's running, people often, when they stand there, they say, oh, I feel a bit, and they do this, like it's moving, it's unsettling, it's makes me feel a bit anxious or something like that. So, and yet when I get them to stand over stagnant water, of course without telling them what they're standing over, they'll often just go, oh, it feels a bit heavy. And if you're living over that, it can feel a bit like you're constantly walking through mud, and it's a very, very dense vibration. I can often drive down a road and see which house is probably living over stagnant water, because these people eventually, their house becomes overloaded. They become the hoarders. They can never get around to finishing things, and stuff piles up in the yard and it piles up in the house, and these people are often exasperated, going, I don't know what happened. I used to be so on top of all of this, and now I just can't seem to get this sorted. And it's not the fault of the people. It's not because they're being lazy or anything. It's because of the impacts that the water's having on them, the stress effect that it has. So it can be very demotivating, I've noticed, with stagnant water. Earthquake lines, as I already mentioned, when you're living over those, that can be very unsettling. And some properties I've been to and I've realised, the earthquake line, the ley lines are not too bad here. There's not a lot of water, etc. And then I look for the earthquake lines and think, oh my goodness, it's, for example, running all the way through the property like this. And it it spreads out, so it encompasses the whole lot. And the things I hear from people when they're living over earthquake energy is they often say, I just don't feel settled here. I'm always thinking maybe I should move, or it doesn't feel like this place is really mine. They always feel a bit not grounded, not solid. Yeah. And so these things start to make sense after a while, don't they? And this is just me listening to what the people are telling me over the time. So, and you can sometimes find it as well, because I'll say to someone, there's earthquake energy running down here, and we'll walk up there and we'll go, and your driveway's all cracked in exactly that spot, or, something like that. So sometimes if it's close to the surface, it becomes quite visible as well. The other thing that I tend to look for is, like I say, significant trees being removed. Now, I say significant because from an energy perspective of what I'm talking about with land healing, not all trees count. Now, they count for the particular trees, but so obviously the beautiful big trees we've got here, if they were to be taken out, of course they're significant trees. They're what I call a mother tree, and they actually have their whole root system feeding into the other trees around. They share nutrients, they share energy, they share the fungal microcosm, and science has released a lot of different books about this topic now, about that fungus underneath and how that all works. Has everyone sort of seen those sort of things these days? So that's what I'm talking about when I say significant trees. If we took out these palm trees energetically, I wouldn't have to actually do anything to fix that as such, because it's not going to create a massive shift in energy. This big beautiful tree, of course, would, yeah, because it is supporting a lot of life around it. So again, often, so the funny thing is sometimes when I work on a tree like that and I say, oh, I'm going to put, you know, this particular crystal, and, you know, this is an intuitive process, and I need to put the colour orange. So I'll put some orange, you know, usually from little fish tank stones or something like that in the ground. And the person will stop and think about it, and they go, actually, the tree that was there had orange flowers on it. You know, so Mother Nature knows what it needs in that particular area. And as you would all be aware, colour therapy, you know, the colours have a frequency to them. So remove that, you need to put some orange back. Speaking about colour, just an interesting story. I did a remote land healing for a fellow in Eidsvold, and I actually met him in Woodford, and he was talking to me about his property, and he'd sort of come back and talk to me a bit more, and he'd go away and he'd come back and he said, I think I need this land healing done now. And I said, well, all I need is the address and a map, and I can do this remotely for you because it's going to be quite some time till I'm up that way. And it was funny because I met with him the next day and I showed him, because he was a little bit skeptical. He wasn't into all of this energy stuff, and he wasn't sure if this was all above board and whatnot. And so I said to him, look, you know, we're going to get you to put these things in these places, and put it all on there, and took a photo of the map. And one of the things I had on there was actually a gold coin, just $1 coin. And he said, what's this for? And I said, well, there needs to be some gold put in that spot. And I said, and gold coin was sort of the nearest thing that I had. And he sort of went, really? Is this really going to make a difference? And he goes, actually, you know, talking of gold, it's funny. He said, because before I bought this property, you know, many years ago, there was gold on this property that they dug up. And I said, oh, okay, is there any there now? And he says, no, I don't think so. And he said, but I should have a look. And I said, where exactly on the property was it? And he looked and looked, and he lifts up the gold coin. He said, actually, just under this coin. I said, really? I was waiting for the penny to drop. Pardon the pun. I didn't mean that. But that was funny, right? So, yeah, I was waiting for him to register that, you know, this is why there needs to be some gold there, because it's been taken from the earth, and the earth had a nice natural balance there with all its frequencies and colours and all of that sort of thing. So it's amazing, those little things, quirky little things that do come up. So that's talking about the earthquake energies, the trees, and so some of the nice things that I look for, the things that don't necessarily need healing but boosting, are of course positive ley lines, because when we found that big beautiful line straight through the property here, we put some things in place on either end of the property. I usually work on the boundaries, and that actually helps to raise the vibration of the already existing great energy that's there. So, you know, this helps the earth as well as the people who are living here too. And the other positive things that I sometimes find are what I call land keepers. Now, it's a difficult one to explain. It's an energy in the sense of it feels like an energy being. And I don't really know the deep history behind it, but probably 1 in 20 properties that I do, I'll sort of go, oh, okay, there's the energy of a land keeper here, and it seems to have this energy almost like a mother tree, where it just reaches out and supports all of the land around it, sometimes at quite a great distance. I don't actually do anything with them. I just let them be. They seem to be just this beautiful energy that exists. And also geospirals. They're an interesting one, and I was on a property just at Doonan yesterday where we found geospirals, and how they occur is they often follow an underground running water line. But you can imagine when water runs under a rock for long enough, it can create this concave effect, and sometimes it can crack and break through, and then the water spirals up. Now, I know I talked about water generally living over that being a negative thing, but where this vortex of energy occurs, where the geospirals are, it's beautiful, beautiful energy. And when I get people, when I invite them, come and stand here and feel this energy, they'll go, oh, I feel kind of light and almost like tingly. And, you know, and I say to them, the fact that this is on your land, utilize it. If you want to sit and do your meditation, come and sit here. If you're feeling not very well, come and sit here and take some of this healing energy. You know, it's really beautiful. So even though I'm walking around mostly trying to find the things that are negative, and it sounds a bit doom and gloom, yeah, of course there are a lot of beautiful things as well. And You know, so Mother Nature does have a bit of a balance there. But many of you would realise where we are up to in the evolution of the Earth at the moment, and there's a little, you know, there's more negative going on than positive. And so I'm often finding about 3 or 4 negative ley lines to every one positive ley line at the moment. So whereas even only, 17 years ago when I first started learning land healing, the balance was a little bit different. It was more like 2 to 1. So, which is probably why there's a lot of craziness going on around the planet at this point in time, which hopefully will shift. Let me see. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because I talked about ley lines being mapped across England, for example. And there are a lot of people that when I get to their property, they say, I've been looking at maps of ley lines and I'm just wondering if there's one nearby. And to me, I always think, you know what, it doesn't matter, because there's so much more to it. And like I say, it changes and it alters. Now, the property, when we did this for Michael, we picked up all of the ley lines and water and everything relevant to Michael's energy, because it's about making the property comfortable for him. And if he sold this place tomorrow and a different one of you bought this place and moved in and said, okay, I'll get a land healing done, the land healing would be different. Now, I'm going to explain it with a property that I was walking with a fellow who was a dowser up towards Gingin area, and it was a funny job to do, because when I got there, he said, oh, there's no water on this property. I said, oh, okay, 25 acres, and I'm thinking, surely. And anyway, so we started walking around, we worked on ley lines, etc. And then I said to him, okay, I'll just tune into where the water is. And he said, oh, there isn't any. And I said, okay, I'm just going to check. And so I said to him, actually, yes, there's some water coming down from the corner of the property running down through here. And he says, no. And I went, yep. And he says, no. And his wife walked off. And I thought, uh-oh. I've put a spanner in the works here. And anyway, I just sort of waited for a moment. He's telling me, no, can't find any water here. I can douse myself and all this. His wife came back with a dowsing rod. And I thought, okay, all right. And I just stood back and watched. And I said, oh, just walk in that direction and just see what happens. And off he went with his, piece of wire. And right where I could see it, his wire literally just turned. And he just stopped and he looked at me and he went, what, how, And he said, why haven't I found that before? And I just went, I don't know why you haven't found that before. And I said, but this is where it gets interesting and individual, because like I said, it's about matching the property with the person who lives there. So we healed that water, and then I said to him, and then he said to me, you can't find anything other than water and electrical energy with a dowsing rod. And I said, oh, why is that? He said, well, you just can't. I said, oh, well, I don't see why you can't find ley lines with them. Like, no, you can't. And I said, oh, well, let's try and see what happens. And anyway, and I've never really been much of a dowser, but over the last couple of years, I've played around with it. People went, oh, this really works, But anyway, so I said, here, you do it. You're the dowser. Head in that direction. I said, there's a positive ley line that we need to boost. I said, you just walk in that direction. You can find it. And off he went, and all of a sudden this rod turned, and I thought, well, not there. But I said nothing, and then he walked a bit further and it turned again, and he walked a bit further and it turned again, and he turned around and he said to me, which one? And I said, oh, well, the second one is what I'm looking at. And I said, hang on a minute. I said, turn around and come back to me and ask which positive ley line we need to boost in your highest good. And he walked back and found only the one, because the other two weren't making any difference to him on that property or his wife at all. So we don't need to do anything with them. And that's why I say what we found on Michael's property recently would be very different if a different person lived here, because it's about matching it to you, making it comfortable to you. Does that make sense? Yeah. So there's more on this property than what we worked on that day, but we don't need to do anything with it because it isn't impacting the frequency that Michael resonates on at this point in time. Yeah. Which leads you to probably ask, how often do you have to do this? Now, again, because we're matching energies. So, for example, I'm just going to put this down for 1 second. Michael's energy, let's just say, is here, okay? And then he's called me because the property is sitting a little lower than his energy. So it's not comfortable, or he might have just been curious. And so we've then said, okay, let's boost up the property. Let's get him to get the property here. And I always take the energy a little bit higher than the person who's living there, because it gives them room to move. It gives them room to grow their own energy and expand and get to the stage where they're a match for the property again. Now, when that happens, that can take months if you're working on yourself all the time and raising your own vibration, or for most people, years. But when that happens and you're vibrating much higher than your property again, that's when you need to do another healing on the process. You know, it's kind of just like your own energy work, right? You move through it and you raise your vibration, and another thing shows up, and you need to keep working on it. So most people, I wouldn't say you would do your property more than less than a couple of years. But I always just say, you follow your own guidance, your intuition, see what you think. Some people might ring me 10 years later, you know, and that's okay. That's what's right for them. So it is about very much matching energies, and we have to factor in all the people who live on the property. So I've even been to places where, you know, you might have someone who's really high vibing and they're working on themselves a lot, their energy is fantastic, but they've got a tenant who lives on the property whose energy is quite low. And so we have to factor that in as well, because if we all of a sudden bring the property up here, this person, it's going to blow them out of the water. It can actually create crisis sort of situations for them. So we have to factor that in as well. So yeah, it's very much about energy matching. So I'm going to share a couple of stories, and I've brought a little map here that I'm going to pass around in a moment so you can have a closer look. I do a lot of work for property developers, and which is interesting that you know, these guys are jumping on board now, which is great, and also for real estate investors, people who just buy, sell, flip properties and all of that sort of thing, because they know and they've learned over the years that when a property is clear and high vibrational, people walk onto the property and they go, oh, this place just feels lovely. Whereas when you walk onto a property that's unhealed, and as I said, most people are more sensitive than they realise, they'll walk onto that property and they'll go, I don't know, I'm just not feeling it. It might tick the boxes physically, but they're just not feeling it. And I hear that all the time. So I've even got real estate agents starting to jump on board and recommend land healings to their clients who are selling, which is great. So this property here came to me. It was sent, it's in Victoria, and this fellow rang me and he said, I've got this property and I'm about to put it on the market, and I think it's going to be a bit of a challenge. It needed renovating and all of that sort of thing, so there's a lot going on with it. But he said, oh look, you know, do you want me to tell you what's going on with it? And I said, nope, don't tell me anything. I'll just take a look and see what I find, and we'll just, you know, go from there. He said, okay, and he left it with me. So this is obviously done remotely, just using this map. So I drew all my squiggles over it, which you can have a closer look at in a moment. And what I discovered when I tuned into the energies on the property, some of you might be able to see, I'm just going to actually slowly walk around with this so you can have a closer look, but then I'll pass it around. So you can see the crossing red lines over the house there. You can also see the pink squiggly lines going straight across the middle of the house there too. And there's also a blue line, which is the water, going straight through the middle. The house is right in the middle there. This is all going underneath the property. So when I look at something like that, I think that place is a mess. And also tuning into the energies, because I don't just work on the lines of the property, I actually work on who's been on the property before, what energy pockets have been left behind, and then often if I'm here, I'll stand in the house room to room and work out whose energy's been left behind from previous tenants or residents as well, and clear those out. So I do the same thing remotely, and so I drew all of this out on the property, and when you have a close look at this, you'll see that those lines are crossing the driveway. There's 2 driveways to this property. And so people are driving across negative ley lines just to even get to the front door. So I'll give that to you, and you can pass that around the group so you can have a closer look. But yeah, that was the first thing I noticed, is when you've got a place for sale and people are driving over negative ley lines, as soon as they drive in, they're going, they're not feeling, oh wow, this place feels beautiful. And so the next thing is I tuned in and I said, when I phoned him, so I mapped it all out, and then I phoned him and I said, okay, this is what I found. And I said to him, there's also a death imprint that I found. Somebody has died on this property. I said, I'm not sure if you're aware. And he cut me off straight away and he said, that's why I rang you. He said it was the last tenant. He died in the house. I said, okay, so there is some of his energy left behind that, we needed to sort of clear out. But I said to him, what's interesting about this property and all of this map is all of those squiggles that I've drawn on there, all of those things underground are all crossing right underneath the centre of the house. Anyone who walks in there, and like I said, most people are more sensitive than they realise, anyone who walks in is just going to be thinking, they're just not comfortable. They don't know why, but they just don't like it. And this place is for sale. Now, he also said to me, he said, oh, you might think this is a bit crazy. I said, oh, try me. And he said, my adult son went there because he lived closer, and he said, I'm just sent him there to do a little bit of work to tidy things up. And he said, he's a pretty big, strong guy, and he's pretty hard to scare. But he said he went there, and he said all sorts of weird stuff happened. And I said, oh, weird stuff like what? And he said, we've got this funny chandelier thing in one of the rooms, and he said, and it was swinging like crazy while he was in there. And he said, and doors and windows that are supposed to be locked and closed were banging open and shut while he was in there. And he said, and he walked into the bathroom, and there was a note in there that said, leave. And he said, and I have no idea how to explain any of this, including how that note got in the bathroom. And he said, and my son left and he refuses to go back. So he said, so now I've got to drive, a few hours to go to this property to fix everything up. And he said, but I think I'd like this done first. Now, when I saw what was on the map, I wasn't surprised about his ghost story, because that property is vibrating at a very low frequency, because all of those things underground are pulling the energy down. And when you're living over that, it's what I call a stress. Add any sort of stress to your lives right now, whatever you've got going on is going to amplify, it's going to make it worse. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about land healing. We're talking about removing a stress from your life, one that exists 24/7 and you may not be aware of. Imagine the person's bed being right in the middle of all of those lines. They're going to be sick in no time. So there's a lady called Kath Backler. I think I'm trying to think of years, maybe in the 50s or 60s. She did some research where she looked at maps of towns where they had high cancer rates, small towns in Europe. I think it might have even been Germany. And she looked at the map and she said, okay, this is where the major things are, hence, this sort of stuff. And she said, I believe the people who were sick would be living here, 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 here. 64 places she marked. There were 64 people in that small town, and they all lived in the places she marked. That's how accurate it can be, and that's how significant it can be. So when you look at a map like that, when I see that, I think I would not want to be living there, that's for sure. But fortunately, these things can be worked on and healed. She actually is the lady that coined the term cancer beds, because each of those 64 people were going through cancer at the time. So did this cause the cancer? Not necessarily. There's so many different things that can cause cancer, but did they aggravate it? Oh, guaranteed, for sure, make the situation worse. So with this particular property, just coming back to this, what I did is I posted him down some crystals and said, these particular crystals need to go in these particular spots, etc., because these crystals, as an intuitive thing that comes through, will balance and match the energy to bring that back to a high vibration. So most often I use crystals. As I said, sometimes it's coins, sometimes it's just coloured stones, it's whatever. When I first learned this process, my teacher taught me, if you find a negative ley line, put X there, rose quartz or something like that. That generally is what will balance a negative ley line. If you find a tree or something like that that's been removed, generally blue lace agate is a nice balance for a tree. And I worked that way for a little while, just kind of doing what I learnt. And one day I turned up to a property at Mt.Cooroy, and I had injured my back, and I thought, oh gosh, how am I going to do this? You know, I'm supposed to be walking around feeling energies, and all I can feel is my back pain. And I didn't want to let the person down. I didn't want to cancel or anything, and I just thought, I hope I can do this properly, otherwise I'm going to have to come back another day. And so I just kind of sat in the car as I pulled up, and I went, you're just going to have to tell me the answers, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to do it, whoever's listening. And anyway, I got out of the car, said hi, you know, started to walk around the property, and said, okay, we've got a negative ley line running down here, walked over to the spot, and in my head I just kind of went, what do I need to put here? And I heard loud and clear in a big voice in my mind, a clear quartz crystal point facing upwards and a rose quartz. And I thought, okay, well that makes sense. That feels right to me that would go there. So I put that there, and I walked to the other end, and I thought, what do I need to do here? And I heard the answer loud and clear, and I thought, okay, this is good. Yep. and it makes sense that, you know, what I'm hearing is the right thing, etc. And I've worked that way ever since. I got back in the car at the end of that, and I went, why haven't we been doing that all along? That's easier. That's so much easier. Just tell me what I need to do, and I'll just walk around doing as I'm told. And that's been the process ever since. So over 17 years, I've developed the ability, I'm going to call it, to see the lines. Now, people say, do you actually see a line? And it's like, not fully, no. It's for those of you who work with energies and see certain things, you know, you probably know what I'm talking about. So I can see it, it's there, but it's not exactly how I see your shirt, for example, you know what I mean? And I also, my energy tells me it's there. So when I say, okay, show me negative ley line, oh, there it is. It's running through here. How do I know? I can partly see it. I'm partly, I can just feel it. And so when I stand there, I go, yep, here it is. It's just this all-encompassing process, I guess, of different senses that shows me that's where. And then, you know, I say to the person, come stand here, you know, tell me what you feel. And they usually get it right. Yeah, and then like I say, and I just get told what needs to go in place. Now, the way I work is with the crystals, and with my intention is to work in healing in both directions. So when we healed this, boosted the line, positive line going through Michael's place and down through the tree, that's also boosted it straight through the people's property over the road. So lucky them. And so if we have a negative ley line, let's say, that runs through here and goes straight through this place, then when I heal it for Michael, it's also healing it on that property as well. Now, how far does that go? Well, it keeps on going, the healing. However, at some point, it's going to be crossed by another negative ley line, which will deplete that a little, and some underground water, and maybe some earthquake lines, etc. Otherwise, we could just do Michael's property and fix the whole world, couldn't we? But, you know, there's all sorts going on around as well. But we don't want to just fix Michael's place. We do want to boost the surrounding neighbourhood too, because you don't want to be the only one happy and healthy in a pocket of negativity. Now, the old-fashioned way of people going out working with ley lines and things like that used to be to use metal rods. They'd stick them in the ground, and they were like circuit breakers. So yes, it worked. The energy would come up to the boundary of that property, and it would short-circuit it over to the next metal rod, and then it would continue. So this place was fine, but everything around it was still swimming in a sea of negativity. It didn't make any difference to anything else around it. So to me, that's not called healing. That's just a band-aid solution to, you know, keep this property okay. So the way I was taught and the way I work, yeah, it's boosting the surroundings as well. So when I go to a property, I, like we said, you know, walked around. We took my hammer and my big old tent peg and put the crystals, you know, 10 centimeters or so in the ground, just so that they don't get washed away when it rains and nothing shifts them, etc. And once we've balanced the property from that perspective, brought that energy up, so we've negated all these lines on the poster that you've just looked at, then I sit and I tune in and I just like open up my vision to sort of see, okay, who's been on here before, what energies have been here in the past that still remain and need to be moved on or cleared or helped, or, you know, or whatever it might be. Now, I do get a lot of people ask me, what about Aboriginal energies? And I see them all the time. And even some people have said to me, like, what right do you have to mess around with Aboriginal energies, etc.? You know, you're not Aboriginal, etc. I do work all over the world, so I obviously can't go around getting permission from every native people in every single country, but my belief is that anything that we can do to help that's respectful and appropriate is okay. Because when I see, for example, that an Aboriginal person may have died on this land, I'm not just approaching that from let's get that out of the way. I'm approaching it from a perspective, if this energy is still here, in a way that's appropriate for their culture, let's help this energy to move on. Yeah. And so when there's battle, like for example, the property at Mt.Cooroy was a classic one, and a couple of others I've done up north recently. Battle between the colonial times, the whites that came, chased the Aboriginal people. We all know the stories that happened there, and some of them are really atrocious. And so that energy can exist in pockets still there, and so I see that all playing out in front of me. And sometimes I say to people, okay, I've got 4 Aboriginal people who have died on this land, and then there's the other day there's also a white person, a British soldier, that's also died on this land as well, and we need to help those energies to move on. I did some work up in the Sunshine Coast hinterland. One of the resorts there called me and said, look, we've got all sorts of things going on here, and can you come up and help and whatnot. As soon as I stepped onto that property and started walking, I was catching glimpses of people ducking behind trees. And I thought, oh, okay, I know what's going on here. And so I invited the Aboriginal energies of the people to come out and talk with me. And so I had a group of people step forward, and so I had a discussion with them about what I'm doing here, etc. And actually they were really grateful, because they were more or less saying that they work on them, to them land was family, and they're still really connected, etc. And they heal and do all of their sorts of things that they have always done themselves. But they said, but all of this white man stuff you're doing, the building, all of this sort of stuff that's damaging the land, that's not the stuff they used to work with. So they actually worked with me the whole way around that property, which was really beautiful. And there was one section where they were creating some, what I'm going to call challenges now, because they didn't want that place built upon. And so we had to, I'm going to say, negotiate, because it's not my job to force someone's energy off the land. It's not my job to remove energies. It's for me to help them understand what's happening today, and how their connection sometimes is holding their energy back and keeping it trapped here, when it actually could be going on to whatever it is they believe is the next step for them, if that makes sense. Yeah. So, because occasionally, you do get someone saying, oh, you're going to have lots of karma, forcing all these energies around. It's like, no, that's definitely not how I work. So also people who've lived in this home before Michael lived here, what's happened here, sometimes I go, oh, I've got a little boy who's just fallen off a swing and broken his arm, and the fear and the pain that he experienced in that moment left a pocket of energy behind. We want to clear that out, so that that's not still here and Michael's not walking through that all of the time. So the same thing happens when I go through the home as well. I can walk into a kitchen and I'm seeing couples arguing and plates being smashed and all sorts of things, and and it's just like, okay, Michael doesn't want to live in that energy. Let's move that out. Because what I've come to experience and learn is that when so as an example, I've had a few places where I've walked into a bathroom and I've seen someone fall and hit their head. And so I'll say to the person, oh, someone's fallen, they've hit their head. And often the person says, oh, that was my mum last week. Yes, she banged her. We had to take her to hospital. And it's like, okay, what I'm seeing wasn't last week. What I'm seeing happened 20 years ago. But the problem is that energy was still there. And so it makes it more likely that the people living there now are going to have the same thing happen. Yeah, because that energy of that remains. So I need to clear out what happened before and what happened to Mum last week as well. Yeah. I'm just going to come over there so I can hear you properly. Yep. Yep.
And then I create every other house I live in. Like I never stay in a house for longer than, let's say, a year.
Yep.
And every time a year comes, there's this panic, and I go,
Yes. Yes. So does everyone hear the question? So she's saying she lived over a house where there was earthquake energy when she was 2, and she, you could feel the energy. It was an earthquake when you were there. Okay. And so after about, a year, she's feeling the same sort of energy building up in each place, and you move often. Is that right?
Yeah, like I like 35 times.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Can't settle.
Yep. So in that situation, I wouldn't say that's relevant to the earth energies. I would say that's energy of that emotion trapped in your body.
Like it's created.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm creating, like manifesting places that match that energy.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So you're just recreating that pattern again. So yeah, so you probably are living over earthquake energy each and every time. Yeah, 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 that's an interesting one. And so you can see how these energies intermingle and how the property becomes relevant to the person's energy as well. So yeah, we can chat more about that if you like. Yeah, yeah. So that's a good example of how all of these things can play out. But for couples, for example, or even if you're single, whatever, and so you move into the main bedroom, right? Because the adults tend to always move into the main bedroom, and you've got the energies of all the other people who've slept in that main bedroom before. If that's a relationship that's fallen apart, or arguing used to happen, or goodness knows what else, and you're sleeping, and which of course your energy is quite wide open when you're asleep as well, it's going to impact you somehow. And I'm often saying to people, it takes about 6 months to 2 years before the house wins. You move to a property with your great energy and you're all excited and, you decorate and you do all these sort of things. And sometimes when you renovate or decorate, or you can actually clear some energies yourself. But the stubborn things remain, and then you move in there and now you're living over water and you're in the energy of someone else who's lived there before, etc., etc. And eventually the stress gets on top of you and brings you down. And I say that because so many people say, it was really great when we first moved in, but now it's like, and then they've got a story, we've been unwell, or the kids just can't settle, or I just feel like maybe we need to move, or there's, all these sorts of things going on. And that's, my experience that I've noticed, six months to 2 years, and the property wins.
So how do you clear the energy inside the house? I know you put your question out.
Yeah, it's hard to answer because it's just a process that I've developed. It's something that I have had to, because I can see the people there and what's gone on. I'm going to give you just a really short, simple answer and say it's almost like I kind of wrap the energy up and then just give it up. That's the simple answer. However, each situation's slightly different, because sometimes I'll go, okay, here's my basic process that, nope, that's not going to work. It's just like, it's just not going to budge. I'm going to have to do something else. So I have studied lots of different modalities of energy work, and I guess I just have created my own little combination of what tends to sort of move energy on. And sometimes I'll go to clear energy out and I'll go, oh, it's not moving. And then I'll hear something about the person needs to know this because it's relevant to them today. And so it's like, okay, let's unpack this. This is, you need to know about this because how is this relevant in your life? Blah, blah, blah. And they'll go, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. This is, yep, I totally get what that's all about. And okay, now that we've seen that, sometimes when they understand it, when they see the connection of what's going on, sometimes it just goes, poof, gone. And I don't have to do anything. So sometimes it's a process of, when I'm going, okay, show me what's here on the property, and it's clear. And sometimes I have to go bang, 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 but there's all of this happens and it's just like, it's clear, it's clear. Once it's been seen, it moves. Sometimes it takes a lot more work. And sometimes it takes a lot of work. So yeah, it's a difficult one because there's so many different factors involved. But the short answer is kind of scooping up the energy and sort of moving it on. And I often leave that information with people and just sort of say, look, now that the place is clear, when you have people come over and you think, oh, I just want to clear their energy back out again, sometimes just a little simple visual technique like that. Imagine gathering up the energy of every room in your house and just, handing it up. I say handing it up to, that's where your belief system comes in. Universe, higher self, God, source energy, that's up to you. But it's effective. It works. And when I started working with people, I used to always follow them up 4 weeks later and sort of say, what's happened? Tell me, how's things going? And the feedback was phenomenal. Oh, my son always used to see that person walking through his room at night and things. That's gone now. And, we never used to go outside at night because, the kids I used to always see this, that's gone now, that sort of thing. So that's how my method developed, what worked and what didn't. Was just sort of through that. So it's amazing what can be shifted, and it's amazing what can be attributed to the earth when we're not taught to think of the things in terms like that. We're often told, change what you're eating, exercise more, do this, do that. And no one ever stops and says, I wonder what's running under your bed where you're sleeping at night. But my experience is it can be a significant factor in people's health. It can be a significant factor in their emotional well-being, especially if you're living over earthquake energy. Water can be very disruptive. And like I said, the people where the houses look like hoarders' homes, often they're over stagnant water. And also financial. So one thing I've noticed that has happened over the years is when I'm working on a negative ley line and I get told to put a specific few crystals there, I always think, I know what this is about. This ley line's affecting you financially. And I'll say to the person, because of what I'm told to put here, what I think I know about you is that financially things are a real struggle right now, and you could definitely do with a boost. And they always go, oh, absolutely. Oh, it's, and they've got it's been terrible. When I find those particular crystals over a positive ley line, I always say to the people, what this tells me is things are okay for you financially, but some better flow would be good. And they always go, yeah, that's pretty much it. So, certain crystals will tell me different things about what's going on for that person. And so in that situation, by me putting that crystal in there, I know that's going to change things financially for them because of what I was told to place there. So I worked on a clinic yesterday. Probably about 10% of my work, people have a home clinic of some sort. And yesterday the negative ley line was running straight through the clinic, and I couldn't even see it from where we were because we were right around sort of in the bush kind of thing. And I said, oh, this one's relevant to money for you, blah, blah, blah. And when we came round to the front of the property, it was like, oh boy, it runs right through your clinic practice. I said, how's clinic going? She's like, a bit slow. So it's like, okay, great. Well, hopefully this is going to start to create some shifts. Yeah. So it's interesting. I could talk forever and a day about different stories. We've got a question down here. Okay. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
Sponsored by ANZ.
I'll pay you later. Sorry? Oh, yeah, lovely. Oh, that's good to hear. Fantastic. Yeah.
Just wondering, you mentioned about negative,
Yeah. So can positive and negative ley lines change and alternate, etc.? So when I'm working with a negative ley line, what I'm trying to do is bring the energy up so it's not so negative. Generally, I'm aiming for neutral so that it's having no impact on the person whatsoever. But sometimes you can actually bring it up higher so that it is like a positive ley line. So in that respect, yes. Positives, obviously, we don't want to switch them around. But the short answer is most often no. It would just be brought back to no impact. But if I can, I'll boost it even higher. And in that case, I would then call it a positive ley line.
So at the moment, you said there's more negative.
I think that's a really massive story about the evolution of Earth and where it's up to right now. The changes it's going through between sort of like 3D, 5D evolution and that kind of thing. So, it's a huge topic, I think. But I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I do want to say also something else about water. Sorry, Michael, I didn't keep forgetting you're there doing that. Putting you to work. So it's interesting because can these things shift? Why is there more negative? All of these sort of things, So with stagnant water, this is really, really relevant because if I'm saying the earth is 80% on the negative side and 20% on the positive side at the moment with where things are at, then when you think of dams and swimming pools and
Fracking.
rainwater tanks,
Fracking.
oh yes, fracking, all that sort of, absolutely, that plays a part. But water, as you know, is a brilliant conductor and it holds energy really well. You know, it's why we hold energy really well in our body, because we're mostly water. So when you've got a dam or even a swimming pool and that's sitting there in the earth, it's absorbing that energy. And so generally bodies of water tend to be very negative most of the time, which is usually why I do put crystals around water tanks, and I usually give the person a crystal to put in their pool. Often I'll say to them, take out your skimmer box, let it dry, super glue this into the skimmer box, let it dry and put it back. Then it's there all the time, you don't have to worry about it. Because the amount of times when I say to people, do you use your swimming pool much? The standard answer is, well, we used to all the time when we first moved in. And we kind of don't so much anymore. When I say why, they go, I'm not sure. And I know why. You know, because it's absorbed that energy of the earth. But also, when you dive into the swimming pool on a hot day and, you know, or after work or whatever, and you go, oh, that feels better. And you get out and you feel wonderful and you've just left all of that negativity behind, like we do in the shower, etc. The swimming pool becomes this cesspit of negative energy. And people don't like to get in there after a while because they're more sensitive than they realise and they feel it on some level. So they might say, well, the kids use it now, but no, we adults never get in there. Kids will get in anyway, won't they?
So do you recommend putting crystals in the pool, a crystal in the pool then to balance that out?
I do, yep.
Okay.
Yep. Usually red jasper. Yep, usually. Yep.
That's what
Yeah,
I
red
put
jasper
in.
has a good affinity.
I did put it in the skimmer.
Michael's got one in the pool, so it'll be feeling beautiful for anyone who's swimming today.
Do you think that these ley lines, such things, are responsible for the sinkholes and that are happening?
Sinkholes. I haven't really thought about that too much before. Certainly the underground water would have a big impact. Earthquake lines will have a big impact. And like you say, things like fracking and, you know, all those types of activities. And I do believe that if you remove enough trees, you're potentially creating a possibility, and I'm just talking, you know, 3D wise, for sinkholes and things like that. Ley lines, I wouldn't say, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I would probably.
Tree theory sounds good because that's reinforcing the soil together.
Yes.
Energetic and
Exactly, yeah. But you've got me curious. Earthquakes for sure can trigger that sort of thing. You've got me curious to have a look at some maps where sinkholes have happened and see what's running over them and see if I can see a correlation with ley lines or not. Yeah, I might do that for my curiosity, and I can always let Michael know and he can pass on information. I'll finish also. What time is it?
Just after 2:30.
I've been talking too long.
No. Well, we started late. No, it's great.
Yes.
Just with what's going on with Israel and Palestine and Gaza, have you tuned in to there, and is it appropriate for you to work with that? Because it is actually, that's been going on for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
So have you tuned in?
Not specifically to that of recent times, no. No. I've been quite busy with my land healing work, and I've just, you know, been inundated with people, I guess, wanting shifts and things here. On those big topics and the big places, do I do that? On and off. It depends what's going on, and I guess in my way I've chosen to sort of work a little bit more one-on-one with people, because often people say, oh, do you go out and, you know, fix all the public places and things, and I say, well, you know, like if we go to somewhere, like, because we live in a 40-foot bus, we move around a little bit, and so where I'm parking, absolutely I'm going to balance it before I sleep there, you know. So lots of different places, you know, we've done trips around Australia in the past where we've stopped at certain places and gone, oh boy, let's just do some land healing here and, you know, help out kind of thing. So in some ways, yes, but also the really big places, I guess you have to do those sorts of things with caution. I did a Zoom call for someone recently, and she said, "Oh, we're going to get you back, and what I want you to do is do an energy reading on Parliament House, and then do a balance and everything." And I kind of went, "No, no, thank you. No, I'll skip that one."
Bit dark.
Oh, I'm sure I'd get a call. I don't want to mess around with that kind of thing. So. We do know people who do some energy work on those bigger topics as well. And I also have seen some horrendous effects that they've had themselves personally from doing that as well. So I guess it's about following your intuition to go, what do I feel appropriate to work with at what different times? Yeah. So again, big question. But sometimes, yeah. Yeah. There was one thing I was going to finish and wrap up on. I can't think what it is now. Yes, actually you did. Yes, that was another thing that I was going to look at maps with, and I did do that in a small way already. And I did, to me, when I look at that sort of thing, it just looks like earthquake energy. And also, I don't know if it was yourself or somebody else asked me, railway lines, where the big trains are thundering through all of the time. What impact does that have? And so I have done a few properties where railway lines have bordered the back of the property, and to me, it looks like earthquake energy. And I guess it's just that constant pounding and rumbling that's thunders through. So yeah, it would be very unsettled, for sure. Yeah.
I'm fascinated with the increase in global population. 1967, 3 billion, now over 8 billion. The massive intention and the effect it has on even the bigger ley lines.
Right.
Not just the international ones, and
Yep.
let alone just locally.
Yep.
So can you comment on how we can affect them positively as in our own environment?
Sure, yeah. Well, certainly on a small scale, by working with the lines and boosting that up. Like I said, by Michael doing his property, he's helped surrounding us. So that's on a small scale. And just let me divert and come back to that, because this will make sense. When I'm looking at a property, for example, it's 100,000 acres, and I draw lines across it and things like that, you would think, given the map you've just seen, that would just be unreadable in all the lines that I'm going to do across it. But when we're looking on that bigger scale, we're kind of looking at fairly major lines. And then when someone says, but can you then focus on the house, and we bring it back down, we're talking about it like a hologram. Yeah? So then we've got all of those lines and everything again. And then when someone calls me and says, I've just got a caravan and an annex, will there be anything? When we look at it on that micro scale, it draws itself all out again, because it's that hologram effect. So major or minor lines are still all there and still, make a difference, etc. So intentionality is obviously massive. With any energy work, your intention matters a lot. And so the way I work is always in the highest good of the people, the animals, the plants, and the land itself on any job, and any property that I'm working on. So the increase in population and the intentions around that, yes, for sure, you can see how that would make an impact. I guess it would depend on the awareness of those things. So if we're talking about the impact on ley lines, how many people are aware of ley lines and whether they can impact them, etc. So it's really hard to sort of say for sure if that has boosted or depleted those. But I guess if we look at the general level of positivity, negativity going on the planet, that probably tells the story. And I had, again, relative to this, I had a lady who was living on a particular island, and she said, there's all sorts of things going on here. So, blah, blah, blah. And she said, I have noted that when I draw a line from a particular very negative place that was in Russia at the time, she said, I'm actually directly on that line, and there's nothing between me and that. Do you think this is where all of the problems are coming from? And all I could do at the time was sort of tune in, and it was just like, I didn't feel that was relevant to her specific situation, but I can certainly see how it could be in certain places. So, for example, if you're, just across the water from everything that's going on in Israel right now, are the lines running through there going to have an impact over here? I'm sure they would. Yeah, I'm absolutely sure they would. So the more negativity going on, and all of the lines through it carry more of that around, and conversely, the more positivity as well. So how can we impact? I mean, if we someone like Michael sits on his own positive ley line and intentionally sends that high vibrational energy as far as he can in both directions, is it going to make a difference? Of course. Yeah, absolutely. So just like anything, when you go, everyone's going to meditate at 7 o'clock tonight, we know that makes a difference, getting that hive mind in a good, positive way going. So yeah, I feel we could work with that. Absolutely. It's about getting the people out there knowing and doing it. Yeah.
So what if we all stood on the ley line from the road all the way through? Would that have any effect if we meditated? Or
Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
we should do that.
Yeah, the more energy you bring into something that's, positive energy and traveling in a direction like that, yeah, for sure. Yep.
And you're all got to imagine I'm going to win $5 million. And I will share with all of you, of course. Don't I share anyway?
You've won us over. That's more.
I'm not promising anything along those lines.
I read a book by Dr. Emoto, a Japanese guy.
Yes.
He's done a lot of research into water and its
Absolutely.
its effect on the earth and ourselves.
Yep.
And I'm just wondering how that could be, how that could be incorporated into maybe what you're doing, because everything is water, or has a certain amount of water and moisture in it.
Yep.
The earth and ourselves and trees and whatever.
Yeah.
So have you ever thought about maybe creating systems with his ideas?
So I guess it's along the same lines, you know what I mean? So for example, if before we put the crystal in Michael's pool and intentionally shifted that energy to keep it clear, if we took a sample of water and looked at it under the microscope, as per Masaru Emoto, you would probably find that to be quite shattered energy, etc. Has everyone seen his work with the, yeah. So then after we do the crystals, the healing, the intention change, all of that sort of thing, look at that water again, I imagine it would be very different. I don't have a high-powered microscope to check, so I haven't done that, but absolutely. And I mean, there's in his books and things like that, they looked at, for example, crystal water from a spring, and beautiful energy, etc. And then they looked at the Sydney town water supply, and that was a horrific mess, which is what most people are drinking. So, can we utilize these things in our life? For sure, because what he taught us was even just getting your bottle of water and writing the word love or gratitude or thank you or something like that before you drink it changes that frequency completely. Absolutely, yeah. He did experiments where he took things like rice, for example, and he put one in the fridge with the word hate on the container and one in the fridge with the word love on the container. And the one with love was actually still edible 3 weeks later, and the one that was had hate written on it, same product, was moldy within 3 days. Yeah, so does our intention matter? Oh my goodness, yes, absolutely. And so for me personally, I wouldn't dare turn up to a property without fully balancing my own energy first and then setting the intention of the highest good for that person. I'm sorry I can't factor in gold lotto or anything. It's just whatever's in your highest good. Otherwise I would. You'd all be rich by now. Yeah, so it is whatever's in your highest good. And so what happens on that person, to property and to the people after that, I have no idea what's going to happen. But whatever it is in their highest good. And I can tell you one of two things will happen. You'll either feel better on that property or you'll be pushed out. You'll move. Now, it probably only happens maybe 3% of the time. And the person often ends up ringing me later saying, you know what, at the time it was like, oh, I didn't want to move, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It's not because of, it's just, that's what the universe intended. That's in your highest good. Most people just feel much more calm and comfortable in the space that they're in. But that's, it's all about intention. And so, when I step onto a property, it's, I run through this thing in my mind first. So my intention for this property is in the highest good of Michael and anyone else who lives on the property, including animals, plants, the land itself, and anything that is negative in any way be transmuted into all that is good, positive, beautiful, healthy, high vibrational, prosperous, successful, peaceful and calm, blah, 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 on all levels and dimensions and until the end of time. That's my intention
Thank you. I think we might
Right.
call it.
It's time for Michael to talk. Alrighty, thank you guys, and of course I'll be hanging around for the days.
Well, I know. It was a brilliant talk. I think everybody would admit. Yes.
I'm going to just get Summer. Thank you for reminding me. Summer's going to just bring around a
Okay.
piece of paper for each of you.
Yeah.
It's got my details about land healing on there, and it's also got. I've been running energy workshops. Thank you. Energy workshops, teaching people how to keep their vibration high, because a lot of people after I've done their property go, okay, the property's great. How do I keep me from ruining all of this good work? You know. So I've started doing workshops teaching people how to keep their energy clear, their energy high, etc. So it's got both on the flip side of a workshop I've got coming up in Nambour in a few weeks' time as well, which is only 5 places left, I'm afraid. But so yes, if you're happy to have one, Summer will come around and give each person one of those. So thank you.
Okay, we're running slightly late, but that. No, it's not your fault. What I'd like to do now, after having that brilliant talk by Hayley, and you probably learnt a lot about my property in the process, and it has been a very positive experience living here, and a lot of my friends know, because I rabbit on about all the things that I've seen and what I've seen with the fig tree and knowing about the ley line going through the pool. It's great, you should all get in the pool. I know 3 or 4 of you might want to swim, but that's okay. So we should start with the games without further ado, because we're running a bit late. It's 2:45. We might have to chop 1 or 2 out. Karen's going, no, I wanted to win all of them. So what we have to do for the musical chairs and the pass the parcel, we need a oval shape with all the chairs. So while we're playing the tennis game, the ones that are not playing the tennis game, if they can move the chairs in like a big oval, and then that'll be ready for the musical chairs and the pass the parcel a bit later. So thanks very much. Hayley's going to stay and take part and join us for food later. The whole family, that would be great. All right, thanks everyone.
Should have joined the beach.
Hayley, do you see the chickens listening in?
How many chairs are in there?
Yeah, they do. I talk to them all the time, so yeah.
It's like a junkie or something.